afternoon, everybody. I want to just walk you through what it is that we're doing at Howard University, how the many challenges that we faced over time, and how it is that we've been able to navigate them. For those of you who do not know, Howard University is located in Washington, D.C. Yes, we've had so much media attention over the past few weeks because after 24 to 48 hours notice, I was told that VP Harris's campaign would be on our campus because she wanted to have a watch night event there. As you can imagine, it was no easy feat to turn around a campus that had just completed homecoming visits with over 80,000 visitors. And on the Friday of homecoming, my mom was gardening and fell over a 5-foot wall at my house, breaking her fibula and her tibia. So you want to talk about crisis? We can do that. From a background perspective, I'm a physical organic chemist who is moonlighting as a chief operating officer. I started at a chemical company called BASF many moons ago, and I climbed the ranks within the company, being a global technology analyst, procurement manager, and then I decided to leave BASF to become an entrepreneur. I started a hair care company, a nonprofit for young girls who were pursuing the sciences, and a hair salon. I will never do that again. Turns out, while I was an entrepreneur, I wanted to go back to my alma mater to teach. My alma mater is Shaw University, my undergraduate alma mater. It's an HBCU in Raleigh, North Carolina. While I was there, I was promoted from being a professor to a department chair to special assistant to the president, and I became president of my alma mater at 34 years old. I do not recommend that journey to anyone. But I did it within 5 years, and it was something that I never planned on doing. I did not have those aspirations. But what it really gave me was a unique lens into university administration, and I get to use that in my everyday life now. I left my college presidency because our Howard president at the time, Dr. Wayne Frederick, he met me at the White House and said that he needed to have a chief operating officer on his campus. I told him no for about 6 months because I said, why would I ever want to work for a man again? I'm the boss now. But it was one of the best decisions I could ever have made. Dr. Frederick is a genius. He was outstanding, and it was such an honor for me to serve under his leadership. So that's what I find my time, I use most of my time doing these days, being Howard University's EVP and COO. Under my purview of responsibility, I've got enrollment management, facilities management. I transferred the real estate portfolio after we went on a very robust $1 billion capital asset campaign. I have campus police, the radio station and the TV station, environmental health and safety, sustainability, human resources, business continuity, enterprise risk management, IT, and data analytics. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Jamaicans have 10 jobs. So, HU, in terms of where we are, we're right in the heart of Washington, D.C. We have a federal appropriation that accounts for about 30% of our revenue. It's very similar to a state appropriation that you'd have at any public school. But we are only one of 2 non-military institutions that get a federal appropriation. The other university is Gallaudet, that's also located in DC. We have about 15,000 students currently, and the mix is about 75% women, 25% men. Our budget sits at $850 million, and we have a $1 billion endowment. We also have a hospital, but I'm not the COO of the hospital. I get to work with the hospital very closely. Please ignore that line, 10,400, that was way back when. But we have an exceptional history and brand value. As I mentioned prior, we are an HBCU, which means that we're a historically Black college and university, but it certainly does not mean that we don't have a diverse campus. As a matter of fact, in our very first graduating class, we had about 3 white women who were family members of the founder, Dr. Otis Howard. The Washington Post is our backyard newspaper. It's the most terrible thing to ever have, because whenever something happens on our campus, if I sneeze, it's printed in the newspaper. We don't get the opportunity to just hide our business. It's the smallest of things that they report. When I was at Shaw, I didn't even have any knowledge of the elevator inspections. The only reason I knew Sherry Berry was because it was a very interesting name, and we would see her name for years, even when I was a student there, as the person who was a commissioner over that area of the state government. And when I came to Howard, if an elevator went down, WAPO would post it. But it was just to carve a story about deferred maintenance at Howard University. So I had to learn very quickly. I was not in Kansas anymore. No disrespect to Kansas. So we are an R1 institution, and we're certainly close in proximity to partners and the federal government. This is what we've done with enrollment management over the years. When I inherited the enrollment management portfolio, we were going through a very difficult time. The university was just placed on heightened cash monitoring because there was a federal regulation that they placed on us, and it was highly unfair, it was unnecessary, but it received so much public attention because our students were protesting that the federal government gave us an HCM2 penalty. It really impacted our liquidity in the most negative manner possible. Usually you get reimbursed for Title IV aid almost in real time. In this case, we did not get reimbursed for Title IV aid until 45 days after the aid process was incurred. So we had to really utilize our line of credit. But over that time, even as we were going through the crisis, what I've quickly realized is somebody has to pay attention to the institutional goals and has to lead that effort in spite of what's happening in the newspapers. And you really have to have a strong backbone in order to be able to do so, to motivate others while you are tearing your hair out. We grew, and now our population is sitting nearly at 15,000 students, but we had to do so smartly. It involves strategic recruitment, increasing our retention rate from about 84% over the decade to now we're sitting at 96% for first year retention. We had targeted donor aid, utilizing restricted dollars in a very different way in terms of our financial aid matrix. We were able to offer digital course offerings to attract a larger population of students outside of the DMV area, that's DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And we also ensured that we were leveraging our financial aid strategy. At the time, we did not have a data analytics division. Institutional research was helping the enrollment management arm to uncover data. And they felt like they were doing it in real time. But as a chemist, I felt like they were doing it in a lagging fashion. So I created the data analytics arm with the blessings of the president. And then that's when we really started to transform how we were doing enrollment management at the university. Because now we could curate the class and see in real time, as students were paying their deposits and as they were matriculating, how that was impacting our net tuition revenue. When I inherited the portfolio, we were at about 9 million in terms of first year net tuition revenue, which was exceptionally poor from a performance perspective. That was about a 72% discount rate. Now the portfolio brings in about 45 million at a 56% discount rate. So it's been a story to watch. So let's talk about my first few months at Howard University. I came from Raleigh, North Carolina, the epitome of Southern hospitality. And when I went to DC, it was certainly eye-opening for me. It was a more transactional environment. I would say good morning and nobody would respond. But I got to understand that, you know, it's a city vibe and everybody is kind of leery about speaking to strangers. Not as bad as New York, I must admit. But within the first 6 months, within the first 3 weeks, we had an active shooter scare. And I remember saying to the chief of police, because I had just inherited a portfolio, he called me, he said, Dr. Dubroy, we've got an active shooter scare, or an active shooter on campus. That's how he explained it. And I said to him, has anyone seen the active shooter? He said, no. I said, has anyone heard gunshots? He said, no. I said, then are you sure we have an active shooter? Now, while he's saying that to me, because it's already been reported that we have an active shooter, this is what the campus started to look like. When you call the Metropolitan Police Department, especially when you're at Howard, not only is the MPD responding, but you've got the bomb squad, the fire marshal, everybody in that jurisdiction, especially from a federal perspective, is responding to campus. And at that time, we were not having the high volume of active shooter scares. that you see nowadays. So they took it very seriously. And this was the preponderance of the response. Now, that's within the first 3 weeks. Now, within the first 3 months, we had a winter weather crisis because, as Morgan was talking about earlier, you have pipes that burst. And in our case, we had a crippling winter and the steam plant collapsed. I had just gotten into the university and I had asked the team, what's the most vulnerable asset? And they mentioned to me that it was a steam plant. I said, okay, has anybody done anything to stabilize the asset? They said, yes, we've done quite a few things and we should be able to make it through another winter. It turns out we did not make it through that winter, and the entire steam plant collapsed, damaging about 6 of our buildings. And this is what the campus looked like, with multiple steam plumes popping up all over the campus. It was a $90 million insurance claim by the time it was done. And also, FM Global, who I love and adore, left us right after that. So you can imagine what it's like to have to rebuild a campus and not having the security of this umbrella insurance. But the good news, the good part of that story is they came back about 3 years later. But this is what happens when you have a university where you have to manage the media and you don't necessarily do it so well. At Columbia University around the same time, Columbia had a $9.5 million case involving financial aid, and they had to settle fraud charges with federal aid, and that was the sum of their challenge. Howard University had a $369,000 challenge. We were placed on HCM2, and definitely Columbia was not. And it didn't have anything to do with federal funds. It was all institutional aid. So, universities are so unique, and the articles were printed around the same time. But it didn't matter because, as I mentioned, who is your backyard newspaper? Who are you dealing with? And in that case, we were dealing with the Washington Post. We had a fire that was no fire at all in Founders Library. This is all at the same time. And as I mentioned, the financial aid crisis and a major student protest. Now, you have to think about the collateral damage. Certainly the university's image, philanthropic contributions were impacted, the lawsuits, HCM2, the media, etc. But I think it's so important that even as these challenges persist, it's important for us to maintain steady leadership. And the reason why I'm talking about that and why it should impact the facilities and operations teams is that no university team member works in isolation of the other. We have to understand how it is that our work impacts the academic parts of the institution, impacts student affairs and other areas, and what makes the machine really work. So it's always important to establish trust. Turns out, I just told the university on Friday, I told them in August, but it was announced publicly on Friday, that I'm retiring as Chief Operating Officer of Howard. I've done it for 7 years now, and it's really been a high-stress job. And so I said, all right, it's now time for somebody else to take up the mantle. But when I just started, nobody knew who I was. I had to come from a smaller campus in Raleigh, North Carolina, and really help to gain trust between myself and the chief of police. That was the first crisis that I had. And I had to do that very quickly. It's important for the team to be resilient and for the university to demonstrate resilience as well. The crises will come, but as we all talk about in facilities, how quickly can we recover? Same thing in IT, etc. It's important for us to be transparent and reassuring in communication. It turns out that I don't get the luxury of just being a chemist. I have to understand how it is that I'm going to communicate to the various stakeholders across campus. But having this varied lens through which I've seen the university, that certainly helps me to understand what researchers are going through. I remember a lot of my team members would just think that researchers were nagging, right? Or faculty members were nagging when they would complain about something. But we had to institute empathy and leading with kindness, because those are the same researchers that are going to bring in the R1 dollars to help the university diversify its revenue streams. It's important to adapt and be innovative as we overcome obstacles. And certainly, I tell my team all the time, there is a set of team members who will deal with the crisis. We will always manage the crisis, but somebody has to keep their head above the water, because otherwise you get so bogged down in the crisis response that you forget about the day-to-day operations for the institution. So as you lead crisis, as you manage, ensure that some parts of the team is managing the day-to-day. In terms of us and how we approach things at the university, even amidst all the crises, and they will come every single year, it's not lost on us that we have seen an exponential growth in the university in terms of enrollment and in terms of finances from a philanthropic contribution perspective. We were raising about $20 million a year about a decade ago. Now we're up to $250 million each year because we have restructured how it is that we do development at the university. And same thing for understanding how we manage the crisis, but then look towards the long term. When FM Global left the campus, I did not know what I was going to do in terms of having an insurance partner, because they brought so much to the table. But once they saw that Howard University was working on improving how we approach facilities at the institution and improving our resilience, they came back to the table. And now we're partners once more. It was also much less expensive for us to repartner with them compared to having to have fractioned insurance policy coverage. So here are a few of the improvement projects that we've done. We've certainly improved our gym, brought our vision to reality. Our students, we have two gyms on our campus. One is an upper gym, the other a lower gym. I think the lower gym is fancier. That's the one that we have our mascot, and on the left, in the left photo, we have quite a bit of steam that comes out of the mascot. You can control the lighting, etc. I thought I would never want to manage steam coming out of anything again, but it turns out PTSD phase has passed. We did lobby projects in times when you don't have unlimited resources. It was amazing to listen to ASU's growth, but that's not the situation that we have at Howard. But what I've told the team, even amidst us not being able to renovate entire buildings at a time, let's ensure that there is something that students can always come back to every single year when they return to campus after a long summer break. So we've done lobby projects just so that we can give students an idea of what's to come, even if we are unable to renovate entire buildings. This is our Marriott Center that is in the School of Business. We've done an undergraduate library entire renovation, creating a library that students no longer have to worry whether or not they can eat in there or be quiet or noisy, but they've been able to have their undergraduate setting. The Blackburn Center, a dentistry clinic. Is another example of the lobby in the administration building where there were just dead spots this entire time. Now we've created something more significant. We've also done smart technology, improving HVAC controls. We took care of the babies. I tell my team all the time, look for the things that are not presentable, stuff that doesn't look good on the campus. IT closets, down to the details of that. This is how much better they look, because everybody in facilities should be thinking about the holistic view of the campus. I got so tired of the media. Every time they would come on campus, they would do interviews in front of the worst assets they could find. I used to say to my team, where is this sign? Because we've done a sign overhaul and I can't find it. Found the sign and renovated it. Because that's the one that they used to find. Same thing on the top left, renovated it, created a digital sign. My team said to me on one occasion after we would tour the tunnels and the mechanical rooms, they said, Dr. Dubroy, this is where we are at that time. They said, this is where we need to be. This was actually a hotel chain where one of my employees worked. And he said, I promise you that we are going to get there. And so as I look to what we've been able to accomplish, this is where the university is today. And I promise you, we did not just paint over the piping. It's actually renovations and improvements and replacement of old equipment, steam plant, and all else. And we continue to do that at the university. Thank you very much.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Dubroy.